The reason I felt the need to assemble this Arne Kring tribute video is not just because he was one of the greatest riders in motocross history, but also he's an unsung hero. Because if not for the bad luck of an untimely injury, he would have won the 1970 World Championship. And in 1970, he was in his prime, so who knows how far he could have taken it. Motocross in the 60s and 70s was a big thing. It was the national sport in many European countries like Sweden and Belgium, and was catching on here in the United States when Swede Torsten Hallman raced here, and when the Bruce Brown film On Any Sunday was released, many young men like myself were enthralled with motocross. It was the world's second most physically demanding sport, soccer being number one, and it was far more rigorous then than it is today. It was much more difficult to find the speed on those faster tracks with those heavier machines and shorter suspensions. As a teenager in 1970, I was fascinated by motocross. The Europeans were flawlessly fast and seemed superhuman. Swedes and Belgians in particular dominated the sport. It was the Europeans that brought motocross to the US. Names like Hallman, Robert, Auberg, Kring, De Koster, Mikkola, Oka Janssen. They were among these first Europeans to race motocross here, specifically in the Inter-Am Series, which Kring won in 1969, and the Trans-AMA Series, and of course the one and only US Grand Prix at Carlsbad, California. Kring was my favorite rider. When I met him at the 1974 Trans-AMA Series at Carnegie Cycle Park in Livermore, California, I gave him my handmade model of Kring on his Husky, as you see here. I then asked Arnie for a Team Husky jersey, and here it is 40 plus years later, still a treasured memento. Here we have an official Husqvarna factory instruction manual from 1970, which gives tips on how to succeed as a rider. The two top team Husqvarna riders in 1970 were, of course, reigning world champion Bengt Auberg and Arne Kring. But on the first page of this manual, as you can see here, they single out and spotlight Kring as the role model and the supreme example for a rider to strive for in order to reach success and victory in the sport. This shows just how much promise Team Husqvarna placed on Arne Kring as their number one championship material for 1970 and the future. Now, if you look at this photo in particular, where Arne Kring has been positioned right in the middle, surrounded by champions and all the top riders of the day, Håkan Andersson, Torsten Hallman, Bengt Auberg, Lars Larsen. But it's not an accident to have Kring in the middle, because in 1970, Kring was the man, the top championship hopeful of the day, and everybody knew it. That's why he's in the center. These champions are celebrating Kring as the new top rider of the time, and celebrating his achievement, rising to the top of an amazing sport in an amazing age that will never come again. In 1970, Arne Kring had the 500cc World Motocross title wrapped up. 3/4 of the season through, he was leading the championship by 14 points ahead of his teammate at Team Husqvarna, reigning world champ Bengt Auberg. All the top teams, the top championship riders, commentators, and motocross fans all over the world were projecting a Kring victory for 1970. But with just a few races to go, 3 to be exact, I think, Arnie suffered a severe back injury in a non-championship race in Belgium. This injury literally handed the 500cc title to his Husqvarna teammate and reigning world champion, Bengt Auberg. Auberg even commented about it, saying, quote, "Now the grounds were paved for me during the final Grand Prix rounds, since he, Kring, was a non-starter. And the rest is history." The European riding technique back then was all about no excess movement on the bike, only what's necessary. Speed, traction, power to the ground with less air was paramount. Brad Lackey is one exceptional American rider that adopted this European style and was able to find success with it. Now the sport is very different. Bikes have unlimited horsepower with advanced suspensions, and because of the new bike design, tracks are shorter, usually run indoors and designed around jumps. The rider now follows the bike, whereas back then the rider had to make the bike work and rely on his skills, like Arne Kring, a natural talent combined with highly technical training designed to win championship titles. Greatness should be remembered. When you strive for the top that so few achieve and come so close, you don't need to have your name on a championship title to be celebrated. Arne Kring is that kind of greatness.